Tonight, our main speaker is Paulie. Please help me welcome Paulie to the stage.
I'm Paulie. I'm an alcoholic. Glad to be here. Glad to be sober. My original sobriety date is June 9th of 2002. My most important sobriety date is July 10th of 2019. I try to remember that all we have is today. It don't matter, If my head hits the pillow tonight and I'm sober, then I did everything I need to do. So here we go. What it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. So I was born and raised in upstate New York. Kind of a funny story. I was Paul my whole life in New York. Now in Prescott, I'm Paulie from New York. I had a pretty normal childhood. I don't know. Shit, I thought it was normal. I don't know what normal was supposed to be, But my dad was a drunk. My mom held it all together, and we just didn't talk about it. That was normal. I didn't turn to alcohol because, I didn't get hugged enough or, nobody loved me or I didn't fit in. It was just kind of the thing to do in my house, and I started drinking early. Here this year I just hit the break-even point. I think I really started to pursue my career in alcoholism when I was, about 15, and I hit 16 years sober, so I got past the break-even point, I feel like, so that probably deserves a drink, I don't know. But, I started drinking early. I like to say I was a closet drinker. Me and my cousin used to steal beers from my aunt and hide in his closet and drink it. I don't know if anybody here's from back east ever hear of Genesee Cream Ale? You could drink that shit with a fork. It's terrible. Big green can, gold writing. It's horrible, but we loved it, And, even from that early on, I believe that I was alcoholic well before I even took my first drink. But, from early on, I loved it. I loved everything about it. And as time progressed, my alcoholism progressed, and again, I just thought that was how it was. I remember the first time I was in a meeting and I heard a guy say, and then I started to have blackouts. And I thought, shit, you mean there's another way to drink? Where you remember stuff the next day? I didn't know. From day one, I was a blackout drunk. And so let's see. So I drank for a while, and then when I turned 18, I joined the Navy. And I had my whole life planned out. My whole family was military, and again, that was just what you did. When you graduate high school, you go in the Navy. And I was going to give them 20 years. That was my plan. I was going to retire, after 20 years. 13 months later, they kicked me out. They said I had a drinking problem. I don't know if anybody here knows anything about the Navy, but man, you have to drink a lot for them to sit you down and go, damn, bro. So I got thrown out of the Navy, but that was their fault, not mine. Victim of circumstance, all that bullshit. And apparently, if you pee in your rack in the Navy, they take that seriously. I guess on ships, you got guys sleeping underneath you and stuff like that. But anyways, so they threw me out of the Navy, and, I blame them for that. Everybody drinks in the Navy. They're just picking on me, that kind of stuff. And then very shortly after I got out of the Navy, I got the perfect job for an alcoholic. I got a job doing geosynthetic work, which is basically construction, but liners for landfills and drainage systems and, that kind of thing. So we were on the road 10 months out of the year. We were never anywhere more than 2 or 3 months. Think about that. It's perfect. You get somewhere, you get to just invent whoever you want to be. And 2 or 3 months down the road, when everyone figures out you're full of shit, you just pack all your stuff and go somewhere else and just invent who you want to be again, I did that from the time I was 20 until I was 27. And again, drinking was just kind of part of that culture. That's what you did. And a lot of that I attribute to my dad. My dad was a drunk all my life, as long as I can remember. But he worked hard, and then he would come home from work, and he would drink, and he would pass out in his chair, and he'd get up in the morning, and he'd do it all over again. So that was kind of my thinking, if you will. I work hard, I play hard, leave me alone. So after 7 years of that, I decided to retire from that. It had nothing to do with them not calling me anymore. So my best friend from high school that I've known since like 10th grade, he was in Prescott, and we stayed in touch over the years, and he always said, if you ever get sick of doing what you're doing, you ought to come check out Prescott. So I did Christmas Eve of 1997. I got on an open-ended plane ticket, and I came to Prescott. So that was 97. By about 99, my best friend didn't like me anymore. Told me to get my shit and get out. Again, his fault, not mine. I came home from work one day, and there was a note on the door. And it said, hey, man, this ain't working. You need to... And I thought, that son of a bitch. I known this guy since 10th grade. He don't even have the decency to talk to me about this stuff, But in retrospect, how selfish, man. This guy took me into his house with his wife and his kid, and I was a piece of shit drunk for 2 years. How hard was that for him to tell his best friend, hey, you're a piece of shit, But I didn't look at it that way. So I continued to drink here in Prescott, and then in, about just the end of 99, 2000, I got hit by a van. So I'm here to tell you can get struck sober. But so I got hit by a van. People always ask me, were you wearing your seatbelt? I'm like, no, I was wearing my tennis shoes. But so I got hit by a van. They flew me to Phoenix. And I'll never forget that when I came to and realized that all of that really happened, my first thought was, well, one finally got me. How sick is that? But in my mind, it was like, well, if you walk home in a blackout, as often as I walk home in a blackout, sooner or later, one's going to get you, And I'll never forget the AA people and the doctor and all that. They came in and they sat down with me, and the first thing they said was, in no way do we condone anybody being as inebriated as you were. My blood alcohol was 5.2. And, well, you got to understand, though, and if you drank like I drank, you were probably about 2 on a good day. You know what I mean? But, so they said, in no way do we condone anybody being as inebriated as you were. And you should have been dead from the alcohol that you had in your body. But it's probably what saved your life. Now guess where my alcoholic brain went? Goddamn booze saved me. See? So I used that. Well, I better stay good and drunk. You never know when that crazy shit's going to happen. You want to be ready, But I drank for 3 years after that. But that was kind of the beginning of the end for me, And, I mentioned that in my 20s I traveled all the time. When I got here, it got real, I couldn't just pack my shit and go somewhere else, So I started to have consequences from my drinking. And so I drank for 3 years after the whole van incident. And like any good alcoholic, I use that, You drink too much. Yeah, I do. Got hit by a van. Did you ever get hit by a van? Yeah, I didn't think so. Shut up. Buy me a beer, But we use stuff like that. And, after all that happened, my family and all that, they were like, and this is how I heard it back then. Well, you didn't die because God has a plan for you. And my answer was, well, he could have jerked me out of the way and whispered in my ear exactly what he had in mind, But I look back in retrospect, and I'm telling you, God pushed me in front of that van. I'm telling you. I believe it in my heart. I really do. He had been whispering the whole time, and I wasn't listening. And he was like, hey, watch this. I'm gonna make sure he's okay. But you know, I mean, I died 4 times on the table, and you know, you would think that that would be enough, but it wasn't. So I drank for 3 more years after that, and my dad, he didn't get sober. He got dry for a bunch of years. He got miserable, but his work sent him to treatment, and I always knew kind of where you guys were, you know. So again, like any drunk, I kept that in my pocket towards the end of my drinking. You know, that was my story. I'm going to get sober soon, you know, that kind of thing. And oddly enough, what finally did it for me was, you know, I mentioned earlier that I went to the school of if you work hard, you play hard, and it's all good. Well, I ended up working in the restaurant business, and if you know anything about the restaurant business, you can get booze anywhere, anytime. You know, it's easy. And my work life and my drinking life started to collide. I couldn't keep them separate anymore. And I know that sounds silly. You know, like the whole die 4 times got hit by a van might have been a pretty good reason, but when I couldn't, you know, I worked in the kitchen, and we used to have box wine in the kitchen, and we used to have concentrated Gatorade. So instead of mixing, I see a kitchen guy right there. He's not, but instead of mixing it with water, I would mix the concentrated Gatorade with box wine and drink that shit all day long, you know. And I can remember walking to work in the morning after, you know, not remembering leaving work and thinking to myself, man, if they don't catch me for that shit that I pulled yesterday, I ain't gonna do that again. That, you know, I'm pushing it. That's it. And here's the kicker with that. I wasn't saying that to you, you know, to make you think I was. To my innermost self, man, I am not gonna do that shit today because I can't believe I got away with it yesterday, you know. And now we get to work and everything would be cool, and by 10 o'clock, boom, Gatorade box wine, you know. So I decided that it was about time to quit, and my girlfriend at the time, who ended up becoming my wife, who ended up becoming my ex-wife, she threw me out of the house because I had an extracurricular activity, and I remember I says, okay, now I got to play my ace. You know, I got the card. So she threw me out. I was out for like 3 days, and I went home, and I talked her into letting me in to talk to her, and I said, you know, you're right, I'm drinking too much. And she says, well, you need to go to treatment, and you need to do this, and you need to do that. And I said, you know, let me just try AA. I said, I know there's AA in this town, you know, let me do that, you know. So I talked her into believing that I was going to do that. And then I had this thought. And in retrospect, it was probably the best thing I ever did. But the thought that hit me was, man, if starting tomorrow I am never going to drink again, I am not near drunk enough tonight. So, you know, she's crying and I'm crying and we're hugging, and I have that thought. So I says, okay. So I get up, I put on my shoes, I grab my coat. She says, where are you going? And I said, I need to go finish. And of course she said, well, you no good son of a, you know, get the hell out. But knowing what I know now, that's probably the best thing I could have ever done for my sobriety. Because I would have always had that hanging. You know, I wasn't drunk enough when I stopped. I got drunk enough that night, I promise you that. But so I mentioned that restaurant that I worked in, and there was a guy that worked there. Then come to find out now, I know that he was only sober a year at the time. But a year sober from piss in the bed, puking blood, I thought that guy just had his shit together. You know, I thought he was. So I remember I cornered him at work one day, and I says, hey, man, I think I'm having a little problem drinking. You know, where I can get a meeting. And I was sure that he was going to laugh at me, you know, because he knew how far gone I was. And I was sure that he was going to laugh at me. Then I could go drink over that for a while and be like, well, I tried to get help. Guy wouldn't help me, but he didn't, you know. And He took me to a meeting. I still remember my first meeting. It was the Alano Club when it was over on 6th Street. I don't know if anybody ever knows where that was, but there's a room full of guys that I had nothing in common with, or so I thought. And I walked in there and I sat down, and they just kind of accepted me, you know. And in that meeting, they said, you need to find a sponsor. And to find a sponsor, you need to find somebody that has what you want. So after that meeting, we're all standing outside, and this guy lights up a cigarette, and I thought, I could use a smoke. So I walked up to that guy, and I introduced myself, and I asked him for a smoke, and he gave me one, and I said, do you think you could be my temporary sponsor? And he says, I don't know, you looking to stay temporarily sober? And I thought, oh shit, that ain't worth a cigarette, man. You know, and I said, well, no, you know, I'm having a problem with booze, and you know they tell me that you guys got this thing kind of figured out, and I'm here to see what's up. So he says, okay, I'll be your sponsor. He says, but we're going to work the steps. And I'm thinking, dude, I just wanted to smoke, you know. He says, okay, step one, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. We can agree that your life is unmanageable right now because you're here. And I said, oh, okay, you know, I'll buy that. Step two, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. We can agree that you know there's something that can help you because you're here. Now, I started to see a pattern, you know, but it was too late to back out. And I says, well, yeah. He says, step three, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. We can agree that you're willing to turn your life over to something because you're here. And I'm like, yeah. He says, okay, you're done with step 1 through 3. And I thought, man, this is going to be easy. He says, now let me tell you about step 4. So that guy was my first sponsor. He ended up relapsing, which I'm not saying that to talk bad about him or whatever, but what I'm saying is I found out that when I did my 4th step with him, he was all jacked up on pills. And the first thing I did was got mad. And then I realized it wasn't his 4th step. You know, it was mine. And I got open and I got honest and I got thorough. And if he couldn't remember it, that's not my problem. You know, I got it all off my chest. So, well, I don't know where I was going. The train goes off the tracks easy. So, so I got that sponsor. I got sober. 29 days sober, I decided it'd be okay to smoke a little weed because I didn't have that big a problem with weed. And it happened to be on a Saturday night, and Sunday morning, he was picking me up to go to a meeting. I was going to get my 30-day chip, you know. And he comes and picks me up like always, and I've been ready, you know. I'm ready. So I get in the truck and I said, okay, here's the deal. I smoked some weed last night, but I don't care. It's not Weed Smokers Anonymous. It's Alcoholics Anonymous. I haven't had a drink in 30 days. I'm going to get my chips in. There ain't nothing you can do about it. He goes, okay. I'm like, dude, I was ready to fight. You know, I had it all set. So we drive for about 5 minutes and he goes, besides, I'm going to break some shit. He says, besides, ain't nobody got to sleep with you at night but you. And that's all he said. So I was convinced that I was going to go in there and I was going to take my chip in there. And they said, is there anyone here in their first 30 days of sobriety? I said, Paulie, I smoked weed last night. I can't. But that was my only, I don't know, relapse, whatever you want to call it. But, you know, I've been sober ever since the first time I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I don't know why. You know, I don't know why I get to be sober and other people don't get to be sober. I don't know why, you know. Maybe I could stop going to meetings and I'd be okay. But I'm not willing to take that chance, you know. If you find something that works, it doesn't make sense to not do it, you know. And I've gotten away from meetings and stuff like that in the past, and I was like, well, I'm okay. I'm okay. Don't worry about it. And is it okay if I keep going? And I slipped away from meetings, a couple times, and I kept telling myself that I was okay because I had breakfast with my sponsor every Sunday. I play cards with my sponsor's wife after breakfast every Sunday. And I told myself that that was enough because I was connected, And I got miserable enough that I decided I would try a couple meetings again. And it's amazing. You start going back to meetings, and the people around you instantly get healthier. And it just, it amazes me. This program asks so little of us, if you think about it. Alcoholics Anonymous has given me everything in the world that I have today. The good, the bad, the ugly, all of it, But when I start getting into that pour me another shot of whiskey kind of mind, I just have to remember to look at where I came from, not where I think I should be. Because I can get tangled up in that a lot. I should be doing better. I should be this and I should be that. And, a little over 16 years ago, man, I was puking blood and pissing the bed. And that was normal. That's what happened. I always envy you guys that say, you'd wake up in the middle of the night and pee in the closet. Because you had a nice dry bed to go back to, But, seriously, and the reason I'm getting into that is today at work was a shitty day, and sometimes we have those. And I wasn't even sure if I was going to make it here tonight because, the whole world's against me. It's easy to get in that frame of mind. And then when I was driving here, man, I got out of work on time, and I was driving here and I had that thought. I said, 16 years ago, look at where I was. And today I work in a multi-million-dollar dealership. I'm a finance manager, so they let me hold their money all the time. They give me keys to the place, and sometimes they leave me there by myself. My family wouldn't even leave me in the house by myself back in the day. And it's like I say, Alcoholics Anonymous, think about what this program really needs you to do. And I spoke here, I don't know, a few weeks back, and I said, if your head hits the pillow tonight and you're sober, you have worked the program of Alcoholics Anonymous to 100% success. That is the only thing that you have to do with 100% abstinence, if you will. And there's steps and there's all that stuff that we have to do, but I've never seen anybody shit-faced work the steps very good, But, and I didn't do anything right. When I got here, my first 6 months I stayed sober on sheer FU, I was sure that the guys at the bar that I hung out at every day were placing bets on when I was going to come back. And I was sure that the guys at the meetings that my new sponsor was dragging me to were taking bets every day that I wasn't going to come back. And I wasn't going to give either group the satisfaction. I've since learned that neither group really gave a shit either way, But that's what I had to believe in order to keep coming back, And, for you guys out there, in your first 30 days and taking a 24-hour chip, man, I commend you guys. Because that's the shit right there, I got 16 years sobriety. Last year I had 15. Big deal. You know what I mean? It's the beginning, man. That's tough. And they just kept telling me to keep coming back. And like I said, for all the wrong reasons, I kept coming back. But for some reason, I just wasn't drinking. And, I said that guy was going to laugh at me and I was going to drink at that. Well, then I was going to come to AA and you guys were going to shove that God thing down my throat. And you were going to try and tell me what I had to do and how I had to do it. And then I could leave and drink over that. But nobody did. You know, they put out their hand to me. They welcomed me. At the end of the meeting, they said, keep coming back. I'm like, me? You know? And after a while, man, you know, AA is a bunch of tricky bastards. Because they accept you. They welcome you. You keep coming back, and after a while, you're like, hey, these guys kind of like me. You know, and I didn't have to make up a cool story about what I did last night to impress anybody. You know? And these guys are just okay with me being me. And, you know, I mentioned I didn't do anything right. You know, I'm here to tell you I have never sat down and read the big book cover to cover. I've probably read the whole thing over the years. But in the beginning, they said, read the first 164 pages. And I was willing to do what they told me for as long as it took for everybody to get off my back, and then I was going to get on with my life. You know, that was the whole plan I had. Some of you may have had the same plan. But I'll tell you, if they would have told me, read the big book, and then when you're done, read it back to front. And then when you're done, start in the middle, read it middle to back, and then when you're done with that, read it middle to... I'd have done all that, because I didn't know any better, you know? But I read that first 164 pages, and I just kept coming back, you know? And I'm here to tell you, you know, everybody says that this is a simple program. It's not easy, okay? And I beg to differ, because it's easy. It's easy to not get drunk. If you don't pick up a drink, you will never get drunk again. I guarantee it. What could be easier than that? You know, and I'm not trying to offend anybody here. I'm not saying it's cakewalk for me. It's all good, you know. But I mean, it's easy to use that logic, you know. And there's this story about strawberries. Have you all heard that one? You know, if you were allergic to strawberries, and they told you, quit eating strawberries or you're going to die, you'd probably quit eating strawberries. You know, you wouldn't stop eating them for a little while and go, fuck it, I'm going to try again and see what happens. You know? But, I mean, it's the same thing, you know, and I thank God every day, and I call my higher power God. If you all have a problem with that, it's just easier to say God than higher power. You can say Buddha, Yahweh, the Great Wheel, whatever works. But I thank God that Alcoholics Anonymous was here when I got here. And what I mean by that is they figured all the hard shit out before we got here. You know, I'm convinced that somewhere out there there's a little book. And what the little book is shit that didn't quite make it into the big book. Because they had to just try stuff. You know what I mean? Before they knew what worked and what didn't. You know, they when I got here, and that's what struck me, you know, they didn't say, here are the steps that some of us decided we were going to do, and it worked for a couple of us and, you know, not for some. You know? Here are the steps that we took that are recommended. Here's what we did. Here's what we got. If you want it, come and get it. You know? And it's all laid out for us. It's all laid out, you know. And somebody told me a long time ago, you know, they said, all you have to do in alcohol, first off, you can't drink. We would be a much bigger organization if we allowed drinking a little bit on the side. But you can't drink. And all you have to do is love a little, share a little, and allow yourself to be shared with. That's all. You know, my primary purpose is to stay sober and do whatever the hell it takes for me to stay sober. Now, lucky for all you guys, what it takes for me to stay sober, or for any alcoholic to stay sober, is to work with others. You know? And when I got here, I wasn't winning. You know, I mentioned, you know, puking blood and all that. But, you know, I hadn't lost everything. I got to a point where I was losing stuff faster than I could lower my standards. You know? I used to, every once in a while, I'd bring a homeless guy home with me. My girlfriend really loved that. But I'd be drunk as hell, and I would find somebody that was drunker than me, and I'd bring him home. Be like, yeah, this guy needs a hot shower. Boy, he's down on his luck. Check that guy out. I'm going to go pee the bed and puke some blood, you know? But, you know, it just amazes me, you know, when I look back now, as far as recovery goes, I have not had an original thought in 16 years. I haven't. Everything that I'm saying to you guys right now is something that somebody said to me somewhere along the line, and something that somebody said to them somewhere along the line, that somebody said to them along the line. That all goes back to that first phone call. You know, think about that. The Mayflower Hotel, and Bill can make a left and go to the bar, or make a right and call Dr. Bob. And he called him. And from that has spawned all of this. And for you new people out there, you know, there is a solution. That's the good news. The bad news is we're it. But, you know, I mean, think about that, though. From that, you know, we stood at a turning point. You know, we hear that a lot. We stand at turning points all day, every day. You know? And I have a rule, you know, if I run into 3 assholes in a row, the 4th one I see better be in the mirror. Because there's something that I'm putting out that's getting me what I'm getting. I can't see the clock, man. Is it time? Oh, 5 minutes. I'm watching for the hook. You know, and here I'm going to get into the cliche part of it, and you just have to trust me on this, because whenever I heard somebody say this before, I threw up in my mouth a little bit and wanted to punch them in the face. But if you'd have laid out for me when I got here what my life would look like 5, 10, 15 years down the road, or asked me to lay out what I wanted it to look like, I would have sold myself short by a long shot. You know, I mentioned my girlfriend that became my wife, that became my ex-wife, that became my deceased ex-wife because of alcoholism. You know, and now today, I have a wife. I have 3 beautiful stepchildren that love me more than they don't. And 3 years ago, God decided that at 46 years old, I was maybe finally mature enough to have a child of my own. So my wife and I have a 3-year-old as well. And if you want to learn about living in the moment, spend about 15 minutes with a 3-year-old. I mean, he can go happy, sad, batshit crazy, back to happy again, back, you know, in a matter of 5 minutes. But, you know, I have so much to be grateful for today. I'm even grateful for that shitty day that I had at work today, when I'm able to flip the script, you know. And it's this stinking thinking that I have that will lead me back out there, you know. And somebody, well, I don't have to keep saying somebody told me, because I just told you I'm plagiarizing this whole speech. But when it comes to AA, man, all we have to want is what's in here that much more than we want what's out there. You know, think about that much. My first sponsor used to, you know, it'd be 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'd call him up, and I'd be like, oh, my God, and this and that. Blah, blah, blah. He'd go to bed. I'd be like, dude, it's 3 o'clock. He'd be like, I don't care. Go to bed. Then today's over. You win. So here's my dumbass at 3 o'clock, light shining through the, your will, not mine. Your will, not mine. Your will, you know. But here I am. You know, here I am. And it's the things that you don't want to do the most that are going to benefit you the greatest. You know? And I like, too, they say, take suggestions. Yeah, they had a different way of suggesting things when I first got here. But, you know, I'll close with this. I said it before, you know, Alcoholics Anonymous has given me a life that I never even imagined I could have. And some of you heard this, but I'm going to say it again. If you were here a few weeks ago when I was here, you know, they say don't leave till the miracle happens. And my miracle happened at 20 to 8 in an old folks' home at a Thursday night men's stag meeting. And the meeting was about the promises. And I was like 8 days sober. And it was going around the room, and everybody was talking about how wonderful their lives had gotten and how everything's good and how... And I'm thinking, you guys, you know, either you guys are full of shit, or you couldn't possibly have been this sick when you got here, you know. I was sitting there, I wanted to just throw up in my shoes, you know. And I remember, I made up my mind that I was going to go after that meeting and get drunk. But my ego was such that I couldn't leave early, because all those people that I didn't know and didn't give a shit about might think poorly of me. So I looked at the clock and it was 20 to 8, and I will never forget this. I thought to myself, to hell with the promises, what do I get right now? And the guy's ticket got called. And he says, I'm Bill and I'm an alcoholic. And if you're new out there, you're probably thinking, to hell with the promises, what do I get right now? And he said, I'll tell you what you get right now. He says, you get 2 goddamn guarantees. And the first guarantee is if you don't ever pick up another drink, you will never get drunk again. And it was like a light bulb. Like I'm sitting there, how am I ever going to stay sober? Oh, if you don't drink, you don't get drunk. That makes perfect sense, you know. And he said, guarantee number 2, if you don't get drunk long enough, your life will get better than it is right now. It won't be perfect, it won't be wonderful, but I guarantee you, if you don't drink, you don't get drunk. If you don't get drunk long enough, your life will get better. I'm 20 minutes from a drink. And this guy said that. And I remember looking across the table. The guy's like 70 years old. I looked across the table and I thought to myself, okay, old man, I'm going to give it 6 months. And if my life don't get better, I guarantee you I'm kicking your ass. But here's what God gave me that night. Was something tangible, touchable, and real that I could hang all this bullshit on. You know, I couldn't fathom, how am I going to stay sober? Why am I going to stay sober? How come you guys... And then that guy said, you don't drink, you don't get drunk, you don't get drunk long enough, your life will get better. So I'm here to tell you, 16 years ago when I got here, I was fucked. Here standing in front of you today, I am less fucked. And I will take less fucked over more fucked every time. Thank you.